So this happened at the beginning of summer 2017 at 3 a.m. One night, I went drinking at a friend's house. Long story short, 3 people in a small bed was nothing short of annoying, so I told them that I would just walk home instead of staying over, as it wasn't that far away anyway. I left my car there with the intention of picking up the following day. It settled with putting regular clothes over my PJs for the trip, because I was lazy, drunk, and it was chilly out at that time of night. Ready, I left the house and started walking. On the very first street, I crossed a man walking in the opposite direction. Wanting to see if he had gone on his way, I looked back and saw him standing there on the other side of the street, looking straight at me. I got chills down my spine and tried not to let my imagination run wild as I continued on. Suddenly, I heard steps behind me. I glanced back and saw that the man was a few feet behind me, now walking in the same direction and on my side of the street. I began to freak out, but I was reaching a big street with a lot of lights and thought I would soon be in the clear. Every time I looked back, I couldn't see his face, as they were obscured by a baseball cap and a hood. I was yearning for him to show me his face, smile, and say, "I'm not following you, we're just on the same path." That didn't happen. Still panicking, I decided to cross the street to gain some distance between us. Because of this, I ultimately had to cross the street again, and then pass in front of him to get to my street. I decided to enter 911 onto my phone without actually making the call, just in case. I was trying to convince myself that he wasn't stalking me. If he were still following me when I got to my street, I'd go through with the call. So I crossed the street again, passing in front of him at a distance, and got to my street. I used the opportunity of the cover of the buildings to jog ahead, but stopped short, not wanting him to see me hurrying away. If he started chasing at a run, I would come out the loser. Again, steps sounded behind me. It was him. I went through with the 911 call, just to talk to someone and maybe gain some sense of security until I got home. The agent on the phone asked me if I wanted the police to assist. I said no, that maybe this was all paranoia, and that I just needed to talk to someone until I got home. He asked me if I was on 8th Avenue, and I answered that yes, I was. Damn, that felt good. My cell location had given him the clue. So then, the agent asked me to describe the man that was following me. Dark blue jeans, black shoes, a gray hoodie zipped all the way up, and a black baseball cap that hid his face. Arriving at my apartment building, I dashed inside and secured the lock. I thanked the agent on the phone, telling him that I was home and safe, and heading down towards my apartment. Looking back to the front door one more time to see if everything was okay, I saw the man peering in, likely watching to see which apartment I was about to enter. I freaked out. I asked the 911 agent to send police now. When the stalker saw me looking at him, he pulled away, crossing the street to sit on a bench in front of my building. I was so afraid to go into my apartment, not wanting him to know where I lived, especially since I was in a basement and my windows were street level. But I couldn't just stand in the hallway until morning, so I went into my apartment, not turning on any lights, and discreetly closed all my curtains. I was shaking. Looking out, I saw the police spot the man and then began talking to him. Searching him, they escorted him to their car and took him away. I went to my bed in shock. After a while, I nudged the curtains open again. All I could see was the empty bench the man had been sitting on. I didn't really sleep that night. The thought of everything that could have happened to me if I hadn't contacted the police and had instead just faked talking to someone like most people do. I'm from Canada, and here the police can't arrest someone unless they have been in possession of a weapon or is in the process of breaking his parole. So yeah, mysterious dude with no face. Let's not meet again. To give it some context, I was not wearing a very daring or revealing outfit. I had on a high-waisted skirt and a crop top, but there was maybe 1 to 2 inches of my skin showing maximum. It really was a normal outfit. I was waiting at the train station. The train was late as usual, Next to me on the bench, I see an old man reading a book that's handwritten in Russian. I actually thought it was kind of cute. Didn't think much of it after that. We finally board the train, and the old man ends up sitting across from me. There was no one else in our little booth of 4 benches. The first 30 minutes or so go by without incident. He's reading his handwritten book, and I'm also reading a book and just playing on my phone. As we traveled, the weather starts to get a bit rainy. After a while, the old man looks up and out the window. He looks at me and starts screaming and pointing out the window. At this point, I notice he seems to be missing part of his face around his eye, but I figured he was old, so you don't stay in perfect shape. I'm trying to understand what is happening. He's mostly screaming and not making much sense. I finally understand that he thinks I'm the one who brought on the bad weather. I'm just sitting there, shocked, looking to other passengers for help, and everyone's ignoring me. I turn to look at the man, and he is screaming that it is because of my shirt. I must have the devil inside of me, because no sane person would wear a crop top, obviously. I don't even say anything at this point. He stops screaming and turns a few pages in his book. He pulls out 2 crosses from his pocket, one in each hand, holds them towards me, and starts performing an exorcism. Parts in what I assume was Latin, parts in Russian and German. He's leaning towards me, crosses in hand, opening and closing his eyes, screaming throughout the exorcism. I don't even know what to do at this point. I couldn't leave the train car we were in. Even if I got up, he would still see me or find me since it was pretty small. I debated going to hide in the bathroom, but I still had a good 50 minutes left in the train, and I was afraid he would wait outside of the door and hurt me as I eventually tried to leave the bathroom. So I sit there. He finishes his exorcism, seems to be content with it. He keeps telling me that I need to leave the country because the churches in Germany are shit, and I needed to go to a good church in Russia for a proper blessing. I nod and sit there. He reads his book. After another 10 minutes or so, he pulls out a card and hands it to me. I look at it, and it says his name and photo, and says that the holder of this card is severely mentally disabled. I'm thinking, maybe he escaped from a facility somewhere? I couldn't get a good look at the name of the hospital. I just anxiously waited for the train ride to end. He says he wants to follow me and make sure that I can keep the devil out. I say no, that's not necessary. He says that he will find me, that Frankfurt isn't a big city, that he can still sense the devil in me, so he's afraid his exorcism didn't work properly. The train is pulling up to the station. He says that I should wait for him, and I say no, to which he says that doesn't matter, because he's drawn to the evil inside of me. I get up, and as soon as the doors open, I run. I ran and ran and ran. At this point, I don't even know what my destination is. I just know that it needs to be as far away as possible. Eventually, I go into a big shopping mall and call the friend I was meeting who comes to join me. I never saw that man again. A little while back, I decided I needed to get back out there and start trying to meet people. Not necessarily actively looking for a relationship, but meeting people at bars just wasn't working for me. So, as most single college girls, I downloaded a dating app. I met a lot of people and talked to them online, and it gave me the confidence to try to actually go out on a date every now and then. I didn't meet up with many of these guys in person, but there were a few. Most didn't lead to a second date, but there was one that was worse than the rest. I met this guy, Alex, and we made plans to go out to dinner. He said he wanted to take me to this nice restaurant in the town between us, but when the day came, he never answered his phone. The next day, he contacts me with a story about getting stuck at work and forgetting his phone at home. Whatever, excuses. I wasn't really buying it, but he asked to reschedule. Stupidly enough, I said yes. So the day comes, and he tells me to meet him at his house, and he will drive us to the restaurant he made the reservations at. He said to come hungry like 3 times, and kept reminding me not to eat beforehand. I guess this place has big plates. Now, I don't really like meeting people for the first time at their home or getting into their car, but we'd been talking for over a week, so I figured, what the hell? But when I got close, he calls and tells me to park in the parking lot down the road. Weird, but okay. Small driveway, I guess. Trouble is, I never told him what kind of car I drove, but he pulled up to the parking lot right behind me and texted me that he was parked 2 spots down. Red flag, number 1. So I get in his car against my better judgment, and we start heading for the restaurant. Now, I didn't really know where we were exactly. I'm not really familiar with the town, but I knew the restaurant we were heading to, and it shouldn't have been more than like 10 minutes away on a major highway. But almost 25 minutes later, we're driving down some dark back road. So I look at him and said, "Hey, where the hell are we going anyway?" He proceeded to tell me that he hadn't told me the full story. Apparently, when he called to make reservations, it took 3 times of calling before they actually answered. And when somebody finally did answer, they told him that they had moved locations and gave him a description of where they were now located, like the intersection. My stomach dropped when I realized we had passed that intersection probably 5 minutes before this point, and I realized that he didn't even have the address punched into his GPS, even though GPS was running. Red flag, number 2. So I pulled up my GPS, punched in the name of the restaurant, and it said the business was closed for the day. Red flag, number 3. At this point, yes, I know I was being stupid, but I stayed. We hung out, talked, and got to know each other. Still, the way he went about things was kind of creepy. When he couldn't find the restaurant, he just kind of said, "Don't worry, I know a place we can go," and drove further into the darkness, eventually pulling over to a trail in the woods, and told me we had to walk the rest of the way. He said we were going stargazing. The spot was beautiful and all, but the whole way through the woods to the clearing, he just kept cracking jokes about how he swore he wasn't a serial killer or something, and telling me to promise I wasn't going to steal his keys and take the car and leave him there. Red flag, number 4. I'm not sure how to explain this, but through half the night, he just kept lying to me. He would tell me these big, elaborate, detailed stories, and then suddenly end with, "Just kidding, that never happened." It was funny the first time when he tried to convince me he got so drunk one night in college that he got his penis pierced. But after 2 hours of this shit, I realized he had been just kidding about almost everything he had said. I realized I didn't even really know any true thing about this guy. Red flag, number 5. Yes, I know I'm an idiot. We were talking about going to watch a movie at his house. He was all for it, and then apparently changed his mind and pulled the car over in front of a park suddenly on the way back. He said he'd rather stay here. He kept trying to dare me to run naked through the park and asked me weirdly sexual and personal questions, like about specific experiences, not even general thoughts or preferences. Suddenly, he demanded to know if I was going to kiss him or not before the night was over, and said he wanted to put on chapstick first. The guy literally made me dig through my purse looking for chapstick while he sat in the driver's seat, making a big show of licking his lips and trying to subtly rub his dick through his pants. But I saw. I told him I didn't have any chapstick, so he said that was fine, but "Why don't you crawl over here and show me what you got?" Cue patting his lap. I told him I didn't think that I was comfortable with that, and then he proceeded to reach around me and tried to drag me into his lap, using my butt as leverage. I told him again that I had no intention of sleeping with him or anyone on a first date, and he again said that was fine, but how about a little 2-minute preview? Cue dragging my hand into his lap. Final red flag. Sirens are going off in my head. I got mad at this point. This was after he had spent days telling me how much he hates men who try to force themselves upon women, and how he doesn't understand how anyone could do that, let alone get pleasure from it. This after he said he didn't want to sit too close to me while we were stargazing so he didn't make me uncomfortable. It was like a switch had flipped. I told him that trying to force me wasn't going to make me any more likely to agree, and that I thought he was supposed to be a gentleman, like he'd been telling me all night he was. He told me that he thought I was just scared of how big it was, and that if I didn't want to suck it, there were other options. Again, tries to grab my hand. I told him again that it wasn't going to happen, and he pouted about it. I was racking my brain to think of an excuse to get him to drive me back to my car, when he pulled out his phone, opened a text message thread. He wasn't hiding it. I could see that the last 3 messages were ones sent by him. And he looks at me and says that he got a text from his uncle saying that something had happened at the house and he needed to get home ASAP. I'm done at this point, regardless, but I hate being lied to. If you weren't having a good time, you could have just asked to call it a night. Why lie? Why make up false intentions and then deliberately act the exact opposite way of what you said? Just why? To make things worse, he dropped me off at my car in a dark parking lot at midnight, and then just drove off before I had even walked to my car. Obviously, there wasn't going to be a second date, but the kicker, I drove by the old location of the restaurant a few days ago. It never moved. It's still open and right on the highway, and his house is about 2 minutes down the road. Where the hell was he taking me? So creepy Alex from Bumble, let's not meet again. You suck.